Hi everybody, I'm Scott, and welcome. Today I'm going to do a maybe Midrash TBR for the month of May. I mean, here it is already May the 2nd, and yeah, I feel like I'm late to the game already, but I was out of town last week, so here we go. I've seen a lot of these TBRs around already. So maybe Midrash is it's an event that I guess it ran last year. Last year I saw a bunch of these videos, by the way, and I said, well, next year I'm going to participate for sure. But I think it was Jason at Old Blues Chapter and Verse that came up with the idea. And the other hosts are Little Prairie Library, Steve Donahue, and Rick McDonald. And I'll leave links to all those below. So yeah, just a little bit about me first of all. So I'm Roman Catholic. I was raised that way. I fell away when I was a teenager, returned when I was, 28 or so, and have been an active participant ever since in the Roman Catholic religion. I'm also a science fiction reader. I've been a science fiction reader my whole life. And watcher. I recently watched a documentary on Mr. Rogers. And someone asked me, do you remember Mr. Rogers being a big influence on your life? And though I remember seeing Mr. Rogers Neighborhood, I would have to say no, he wasn't a huge influence because I just don't remember watching him that often. But if I had to pick something on TV that was a huge influence on me, it would be Star Trek, the original series. I remember clearly a period in my life where I would get up before 6 in the morning on a Saturday to make sure that I watched it. But yeah, so Mr. Spock was my Mr. Rogers. And I say that jokingly, but I really do mean it. Mr. Spock was a person who had two halves. He had a human half and a Vulcan half, and the Vulcan half was all logic, and that was what I felt inside myself, was this pull towards religion, but the pull also towards science. And it wasn't until I realized that religion and science are not incompatible, and I really do mean that. I don't believe that they are both competing ways to explain the universe. I simply don't believe that. So all these arguments, even the recent, Steve Donahue did a recent, it was like a kickoff for maybe Midrash. Was it a month ago already? It could have been even a little more than that. But even then, I was in the comments talking to somebody about faith and reason, but it's an odd thing. I feel like the culture has blown that up into something that is common knowledge, right? Imagine, feeling that way, feeling conflicted in that way, and then realizing that, there are religious scientists everywhere. And not knowing that as a kid, right? And growing up, and then suddenly, wow, there are scientists of all faiths that practice good science, right? And but just that, and there are science fiction writers, there are science fiction readers, there are plenty of science fiction writers that are atheists, So even in, this whole idea persists. Here it is. The whole idea persists. So the latest issue of Asimov's magazine has an essay in it by James Gunn. This is not the director James Gunn, but the science fiction writer James Gunn, who passed away just this last December. He was 97 years old. He wrote a lot, and he wrote a really good history of science fiction. I think it was in 4 volumes called The Road to Science Fiction. But James Gunn, so he's got a short story in here called Reclaiming the Stars. But then he also has an essay in here called Religion and Science Fiction. Let me find it here. So I read it this morning, but even here he says, in one of the introductions to The Road to Science Fiction, I commented that religion and science fiction weren't compatible, that religion offers answers to the questions that science fiction wants to explore, like, what are we humans? Where did we come from? And what kind of world did we inhabit? And how was it created? How did we develop into the kind of people we are? And what will be the next change in our development? What seems like religious science fiction may include spaceships or catastrophic natural events, but causes are often mysterious and have an underlying message, so he goes on. But then he says, I was recently led to reconsider this, to reconsider the ways in which science fiction has incorporated the concept of religion or its beliefs and practices. And then he spends the rest of the essay giving examples of religious science fiction, and not recent stuff either. I mean, he even talked about Edgar Rice Burroughs. He talked about Arthur C. Clarke, a little bit of Isaac Asimov, if I recall. Arthur C. Clarke especially wrote a lot about religion, even though he was an atheist. There's a lot of religion in his science fiction. And it's critiquing, no doubt, but it's like, okay, well, if God doesn't exist, then here's a godlike alien to put in his place, There was a lot of Arthur C. Clarke stuff that was like that. So I grew up reading science fiction, grew up watching science fiction, and the message that I'm getting from there is that religion and science fiction, or religion and science, are not compatible. So I had this dichotomy inside myself where, I had to resolve, and I did resolve it. It's actually quite easy to resolve because I don't even, that science and reason, or the faith and reason thing, doesn't even make sense to me. That argument, it's like, in a way, we're speaking a couple of different languages, but to me, it's not the same thing. I mean, science is something and faith is something else. My faith does not mean that I walk blindly around ignoring the universe. That's not what that means at all, right? So, somebody said one time, and it stuck in my head, that faith, the opposite of faith is not doubt. The opposite of faith is certainty, So I find that just an interesting thing to think about as well. So I don't find those things difficult. So what I picked is a nonfiction book. I know that a lot of people have picked multiple nonfiction books and multiple fiction books, but I only picked one of each because I think that's what I can handle this year. But what I picked is the Confessions of St. Augustine. This will be a reread. Confessions of St. Augustine. This is a nice volume from the Word on Fire, and I haven't read this volume yet. I think that the translation is by Frank Sheed, if I recall right. So St. Augustine was a bishop in the late 300s and early 400s AD in northern Africa, and he wrote this book. And this book is it's like an autobiography, partially an autobiography, but it's also like a prayer. The entire thing is like a prayer because it's written to God. He's addressing God the entire time, and so it's like a prayer that we get to participate in, or get to overhear, right? That's the way Bishop Barron says. He says it's best appreciated as a prayer overheard. So St. Augustine, and I'll have more to say about St. Augustine as we move forward. The book that I picked that's fiction, I mean, there is so much science fiction that has to do with religion, but I picked this one, Eifelheim by Michael Flynn. And I picked this because right here, this blurb is Carl Sagan meets Umberto Eco by Entertainment Weekly. I don't know about that. This is a reread, but the reason I want to reread it is because it's a book that part of it, half of it, takes place in medieval times in the 1300s, and the author said that he has spent some time figuring out or making sure that the medieval mindset is accurate in this book. So the medieval characters, the ones from that time, are accurately portrayed as in thought, philosophy. So I've learned a lot since I've read this book the first time about the medieval mindset, and I'm very interested to go back and see what's here. So let me just read the description. This was written, by the way, and it was after 2000, I'm pretty sure. Let's give you a date here. Why am I not seeing? There it is, 2006. That sounds right. Okay. So here's the description. Centuries ago, one small town in Germany disappeared and was never resettled. Tom, a contemporary historian, and his theoretical physicist girlfriend Sharon become interested. Tom, indeed, becomes obsessed. By all logic, the town should have survived. What is so special about Eifelheim? In the year 1348, Father Dietrich is the village priest of Oberhochwald, the village that will soon gain the name of Teufelheim, in later years corrupted to Eifelheim, when the Black Death is gathering strength but is still not nearby. Dietrich is an educated man, knows science and philosophy, and to his astonishment becomes the first contact person between humanity and an alien race when their ship crashes in a nearby forest. It is a time of wonders and the shadow of the plague. Flynn gives us the full richness and strangeness of medieval life, as well as some intriguing aliens. Tom, Sharon, and Father Dietrich have a strange destiny of tragedy and triumph in this brilliant SF novel by the winner of the Robert A. Heinlein Award, Michael Flynn. So, looking forward to revisiting this. I have some memory of what happens, just a little bit, but I feel like with what I've gained since then, it'll be really interesting. Now this cover's adequate, right? But I don't know, it's all right. But there's a cover for a Polish edition that I'll go ahead and I'll put it right here. That I just love. I ran across it on the internet and I said, oh, I love that. I love that. I would love to have that as a poster or something. If anybody happens to have that an edition of that, I would love to have a good quality scan of that cover. So, so that's it. Sorry, I was about to sneeze. But okay, but that's it. So that's what I'm going to read this month for maybe Midrash, and I'm looking forward to making videos on these. And we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.